Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another What Would You Change movie podcast. Continuing or starting, depending on how these come out. It's our Christmas time. It's the holiday season. So we've been watching all of those classic movies that we all grew up with, whether we wanted to watch them or not. This time we're going through Home Alone. Home Alone is the story of an 8-year-old troublemaker. He must protect his house from a pair of burglars when he is accidentally left home alone by his family during a Christmas vacation. Was directed by Chris Columbus, written by John Hughes, stars Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, John Hurd, Catherine O'Hare, and John Candy shows up in it. So yeah, what do you guys think? Nuggets, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I've seen this one many a times. So I'll start off with the music. I thought without the music for this, like, it would not be the same film. It was done by John Williams, and like it really brought in the Christmas feel. When you think of like Christmas films or anything, like you think kind of like just kind of put together, like not bad films, but the level of detail that was put into this, like to me on all fronts, like was over the top. Like I felt like they knocked it out of the park on almost everything.
That's something that I actually really loved about John Williams, the composer. The way that he composes his music is basically very unique to the movie. And that was something that I've always really loved about it. And I agree with your statement that this movie wouldn't be the same movie without his music and his effort and his care put into composing the music for this movie.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. So I can't say anything more about that. That was integral to, I think, the success of this movie. The bad guy characters. I like how different they were, and
one's tall and one's short.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for.
One's got hair and one's bald. And
no, I liked how they just like they didn't get along like between themselves. Like it was funny to just see that. And I remember seeing something. And it was about with Joe Pesci and how he was trying to come up with this role, because like he wasn't used to doing a film like this where he wasn't swearing.
That's very scripted, yes.
And so what he said he did is like he took that and then he turned that into that kind of mumbling when he gets hurt. Yeah. And so that's what. Mm-hmm. So instead of him swearing, which was what he would normally do, he turned it into that, which worked really well for this.
So he did Goodfellas right before this.
Yeah. So I thought both of their characters were really interesting to watch on how they reacted to all of the traps and situations that unfolded throughout the film. And they played both of those really well. And I like that
I think those are the two standouts of the film, is those two. Daniel Stern, or Howard Stern, and Howard Stern? Daniel Stern. Daniel Stern.
It's not Howard Stern.
I said it right the first time and then went back to the other way. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. And I like how they kind of set up, like they set the stage at the beginning of the film with kind of that with Joe Pesci in there posing as a cop, trying to get the inside information on the neighborhood. Going into more detail, the one thing that kind of stood out to me was like the detail of just everything that was in Buzz's room when he was like going into his secret stash, and then he was
the very
and when he
set dressed,
and the just everything that was on his shelves. It just seemed like it didn't seem like someone just went in and was like, oh, I'm just gonna get a bunch of stuff that like some 8-year, or he's probably like, I don't know, like 13
or 14.
Yeah. Like it just seemed like whoever was choosing it like did a good job.
Yeah.
And then just the way that when when Kevin was climbing up the shelves and they just broke apart, like that was well done. Because it wasn't because they filmed it and like it just came apart, and like you wouldn't necessarily expect that, but like it looked pretty realistic in the way that it was executed. So, and then I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail of any of the specifics, but the home invasion, all of that, like that's what makes a Home Alone film, and that's kind of where all of the sequels kind of was the whole point of all the sequels, right? Regardless of where it was at, it was setting up all those traps and just seeing the antics of everything. And so I think that's what defines a Home Alone film. I mean, I thought the makeup was pretty good, just with like when he gets his scalp burnt off and the iron to the face, like it looks at least realistic enough that it's not off-putting.
Well, I'd say, believable.
Believable,
you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Believable for the kind of comedy that it is.
Yes. Yeah. It was, let's just say it was better than Arnold Schwarzenegger without eyebrows in The Terminator.
Except that, I was going to say, his bald cap eyebrows.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they actually did that or not, but they certainly looked like very prominent brows in Terminator. So you got a pretty good list of things you really like about this. Yeah. Is there anything that stands out that you don't?
I don't know. It's hard for me to fault it.
It is one of those difficult movies to really kind of pick apart, because is it the best film ever made? Is it, award-winning, amazing, all this? No, it does everything it needs to do very well.
Yeah.
It's got its point and it does that.
Yeah.
And so,
It has a very simple story and it tells a very simple story.
Yeah. So then nothing you'd really probably change too much about it.
No, not really.
It's perfect.
I wouldn't say it's perfect.
It's
perfect. But
I did like that they reinforced themes kind of throughout it. Like they just how like the pizza guy is always hitting statue, the aftershave thing. Like they repeated those scenes over and over to give you a sense of like you're in a routine, right? Like there's a routine going on. It's normal, and
it's the running gag that especially the pizza guy.
And then they kind of allude to the spider throughout, and then they finally use it in the end. But it's I like those kind of interwoven elements that they kind of allude to. They show it, and then it goes away, and then it all comes together in the end. I honestly think this will be one that stands the test of time for a Christmas film, at least for a while. Sometime.
For a while.
Probably not indefinitely.
They remake it.
Yeah.
until they redo the gritty reboot.
That might be terrible. That would be terrible.
Yeah.
The gritty reboot.
Probably. Monkey Feathers, what are your thoughts? What'd you like?
So I did like the film concept, where it's people who are going on vacation around Christmas time and that people are going to rob them. It's something that I know can pose a potential fear, so to speak, that, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and is my home protected? Is my stuff protected? You don't know. And then you have this kid who's left home alone to essentially then protect his house. So I did like the film concept, and I very much agree with Nugget's assessment of the score, because John Williams is one of my favorite composers. He is a very good composer, and I've loved his music. So I've always felt that this movie would not work without his music, because it just helps tie it together, and it helps to piece together scenes and emotion and just everything that's going on, and it helps tie it together. So I very much do love the score for this. But if we're going into my lovely dislikes, I'm going to nitpick the beginning of it. How did the cop get in the house? Or so did the cop, air quotes, but the burglar. How did he get in the house? Like, did someone just let him in and like then leave him?
Yeah,
Probably.
Because
all the
he's
chaos,
spending he's spending 10 minutes just trying to get a hold of a parent. Who let
They
him
do that
in?
with the pizza guy. Like somebody comes and grabs the pizza and then walks out. And
Well,
then
the burglar let the pizza guy in.
he let the pizza guy in, but then several people interact with the pizza guy and the cop and walk away. And so it's fairly believable, I think, in the context of the chaos going on, that a kid opened the door and said, "Oh yeah, I'll go get my dad," and then disappeared. So.
Yeah, fine, whatever. For the alleged cop, but the burglar, for him to be standing there for 10 minutes and then who let him in? It's just the nagging thing that just bugged me is who let him in? But another thing
that'll be the tagline of the Gritty reboot, who let him in?
Yeah, who let him in? But the logistics of, I think he's 8, but the logistics of an 8-year-old coming up with these traps to then hinder the burglars from stealing from his home. Not only that, they're traps that could kill people. Like a flamethrower, it could kill someone. A brick to the face or a brick to the head, concussion, and he's dead. It's just like so many traps that are essentially aimed to kill someone. They're not funny. They're not comedic. It's a death. That's problematic for me, as well as the time frame, because he's setting up all these traps throughout his house in an hour. What?
Yeah,
he's an 8-year-old kid and he's setting up traps.
It's a little unbelievable.
In an hour, and he has time to then make him dinner in an hour. I'm just gonna keep elaborating that in an hour. It doesn't make sense. That would be something that I would absolutely change, is to make it a more believable time frame. That maybe it's 3 hours and he's really concocting all of these traps, making them worthwhile, so to speak, but to actually spend time building it, because I don't think that an 8-year-old is going to be able to set up all these traps. Not only that, but ice. I don't think ice is going to freeze in an hour, or water freeze into ice in an hour, making it icy steps.
Depends on how cold it is.
Depends on how cold.
But make it a more believable time frame. That would be something that I would change, so that you can actually believe that this kid really did set up all these traps. Because otherwise it's just a magical film and you wave a wand and everything just works out.
Yeah, that's movies.
It is, but you also get realistic movies that they do have an element of
plausibility,
unrealistic, but there's always the element of possibility that that can actually happen. What about you, Loki? What are your likes?
I really like the burglars. Like I said, I think those are the better actors that they put in the film. Not just because they're goofy over the top parts, but they play them well. And to see Joe Pesci go from all of the roles that he's played to everything he's done since. I mean, he's very much Joe Pesci in everything that he does, but he's Marv. Is he Marv in that one? Marv or Harry? I think he's Harry.
I think Harry.
He is that character where he's not the same guy, annoying, fast-talking, slick greaseball criminal from the Lethal Weapon series. He's not the mobster that he is in everything. Those kinds of things. So he does fit that very well, and they do. I think they build the movie more than anything. Like, I think that's why people like this and keep coming back to it, is because of those two. Outside of that, I mean, the score is okay.
How dare you? I can't talk to you now.
It's it is that classic. Like, it is kind of the way I feel with like most holiday movies or themed movies, is they either fit for what they're supposed to be or they don't, and they're fun to watch for the season that they're a part of. But I think that there's a lot of things, like as far as the believability that you guys have kind of gone into a little bit, like when he's riding the sled down the stairs and you're looking at it going like, that doesn't line up. And they kind of try and tilt it, and you're just like, I mean, even as a kid, you're like, no, that doesn't work.
He would have broke his neck.
Yeah. He would have just hit the wall and just been, it would have, I think that there's, they make Kevin McCallister fairly relatable, I think, with his fears of all those kinds of things. I mean, they're all cliches, like he's afraid of the basement because of the boiler, and he's afraid of the neighbor because he's an old man who looks scary, kind of a thing. But it's the second he talks to him, like, he's terrified of this guy the entire time, and then the guy walks up to him in the church and goes like, hey, do you mind if I sit down? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to impart some life lessons on you, old man. And you're just like, okay, so a lot of those things just don't kind of jive, but it works. I mean, it is what it is. It's one of those that I like, showing my kids, I watched it with them and they enjoyed it for the third or fourth time that they've seen it. So as far as the big things I didn't like, and I would have changed, kind of all wrapped up in one. Kevin's supposed to be the troublemaker in the house, but that doesn't really come across. It really seems like he's just a kid and everybody else is just treating him like shit. Like
hardcore. Like terribly.
I mean, at the beginning, he's asking for help. He's trying to figure out what's going on. His parents are ignoring him and telling him he's causing all of these problems. They're going to make him sleep in the same bed as the cousin who pees the bed. And they're like, if he has anything to drink, and then you see the kid and he's like got a Pepsi and he's like, hey, I'm going to piss all over you. And you're just like, it just doesn't make they try to make him out to be the villain at the beginning. And like, he's going to go through some lesson and be better for it. But really his family just treats him like shit the whole time and then forgets him.
Yeah, that's something that I did have issues with, is that the family really didn't have a redeeming quality of anything. Because even when they've realized that they've left him, his other family members are like, oh, I feel kind of bad, and maybe we should go back for him. It's like, dude, he's your family. You're just treating it like, oh, he's fine. He's 8, he's fine.
His brother keeps egging him on and making fun of him, and then he finally pushes back. But he gets in trouble for that, not the brother, all those kinds of things. And then the other thing, they set it up as they're forgetting him, right? The power went out so that they miss all their alarms and they're in a big rush again. And the phone lines are out, and the phone guy says, yeah, it's going to be maybe a whole week or so before we can get these things figured out. And then everything goes on. Kevin continues to use the phone the entire time. He orders pizza, he calls the cops, he does all those kinds of things. The family, when they get to France, uses the phones to call every house in the neighborhood except their own.
Yep.
They never once try to call their own house to see if Kevin's okay. They call the police. They do all those kinds of things. But they don't think to call the house and say, hey, go here and do this, it's...
Well, you don't know if it was the neighborhood's phones that were down, because they were right outside just their house. And the telephone guy talked just to them. Yeah. So it could have just been their house.
But then Kevin uses the phone all the time. He orders pizza. He does, like I say, it's one of those things that it doesn't even take overthinking to just be like, wait a minute, what? Like, the first thing that they do is not call the house. That's the first thing that they would have done off the plane. Yeah. But the movie doesn't work. It can't work without that. So just don't draw attention to it and just keep going through everything. So those are the big things I would have changed. I would have actually had there be a real arc with him, like maybe show him being more of a prankster kind of a thing, where he seems like an 8-year-old kid who's struggling to fit in with his family and struggling to kind of grasp with, the growing up a little bit, which is kind of the arc they take with him. But I mean, his family just treats him like crap the whole time. And then as soon as they're back, they're like, yay, you're here. And his dad's like, oh, you're a funny little guy, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then they all walk away and they leave him standing there by himself again.
Like I said, no redeeming quality for the family.
Yeah, they're just, there's nothing there. And that's kind of, those are the things I didn't like, and I would have changed those a little bit. Like, I think everything they did with his plan, I don't mind it's only an hour. You know what? I can believe that. That's great. I'm not going to be,
Nitpick.
But the things, within the traps, I have noticed it the last few times I've watched this as well, is the traps seem to work to a point, and they only work because the guys give up. So they split up, one goes downstairs, one goes to the front door. Or they're at the back door is where they start. I should start at where they start. And he shoots them with the BB guns through the doors. But then rather than try and keep going through that door, one goes downstairs, one goes to the front. And in the basement, he gets hit in the head with the iron, and then he gets stuck on the tar and steps on the nail.
Yeah.
But then he doesn't just keep going up those stairs. Like, he's already gone that far. Just go 2 steps further and you're in the house. So, those are the kinds of things where it's just like, okay, these are the gags that we've got to get to. And then rather than have them progress, we got to move them around to another gag, those kinds of things. Like, those are the more when you think about it kind of things. You're like, wait, why wouldn't you just, like, yeah, you stepped on the nail, but now there's nails on there. So just keep an eye out for them and, move around them. But, like, the bigger things are just the fact that his family are really the villains in it. Like, or as much the villains, I should say, as the burglars. Other weird things is, like, even when the elderly neighbor saves him from the bad guys, just no questions asked. Just, I'm going to drop you off at your house, and then I'm going to go home, and then that's that.
Yeah.
And then I also think that was the house. Maybe it was across the street. I don't know. Just some of those logistics where you're like, I don't know which house was the one that was flooded and which one was the neighbor.
The one across where the old man saves Kevin, that's the house that the burglars robbed prior, and then he plugged the sink.
So it was,
and that's why
it was across the street, not next door. Because overall, I give this one a pass because it is what it is.
But it's all
kind of like a lot of the.
It's all about just the enjoyment of watching it, right? Like, I don't think it's not one of these films like I'm gonna become like it's gonna mesmerize and change my life and let me see a whole new perspective of things. Like, it's very much just get enjoyment out of watching it. And I think if you look at it from that perspective, they do a really good job at doing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think they accomplished what they set out to do. I don't think they set out to change the world. I just think that they made a really they had a goal and they achieved it. They did it very well. And like I said, cultural phenomenon for the time. Like, if you hadn't seen this movie growing up in the 90s, you were the weird kids whose parents didn't let you watch TV kind of thing. That was the the kind of thing you were missing out if you hadn't seen it. So it's one of those that I don't necessarily look forward to watching it, but I know I'll probably see it. By the time this episode airs, I will probably have already seen it at least one more time. But it's a good one. It's one I would certainly recommend people see. Not necessarily this is how you should make film or study it, but I think it is one that you should see and stands the test of time. That'll do it for this holiday episode of What Would You Change? Let us know in the comments what you think of Home Alone. If you agree with us, disagree with us, other movies we should watch, particularly next year for the holiday season. Let us know what your favorite Christmas movie is in the comments down below, and we'll catch you in the next one. Adios.